Alright, so we are about to play through the Chandra campaign of the story mode, or the origin story mode of Magic Duels. Looking forward to this. I haven't played any of this yet. I don't know what the deck looks like. I'm not gonna read through the story. I'm gonna cut out all the loading screens and stuff. If you're interested in the storyline, I mean, play the game. I think this only works if everyone eventually kind of picks this up and messes around with it. But just to make a long story short, you're Chandra, you're this little girl living in the magical equivalent of India. You're a pyromancer in a state that doesn't really take kindly to spontaneous displays of magic, so life is rough from you. But eventually you're going to deal with that. So, like I said, I have no idea what to expect from this deck. I mean, there's only so many ways you can build kind of an introductory red deck. I imagine I'm going to see a lot of small creatures, a lot of burn spells. I'm going to see a young pyromancer. So this is probably the best card in my deck, I would guess. This is a card that's not just good in these kind of introductory formats, but competitive in very serious magic, in the most kind of expensive and challenging formats that you can play. In Magic the Gathering, this card sees play. So I'm probably going to think about sculpting my strategy around Young Pyromancer here. I've also got a Giant Elemental, which I'm not a huge fan of, and a game-ending burn spell, which is cool. This hand is a little slow. I was expecting to hit a little bit harder out of the gate. I might even be the controlling player here rather than the aggressive player. I have a lot of lands, which means I might get flooded, but for a first outing, I think I'm fine keeping this hand. So my opponent plays first. He's also a red deck. He's probably the beatdown here. I'm probably the control, which is surprising. Oof, trying that mountain hurts. But I think it'll be for a more interesting watching experience, so that's good. So our plan here is to play Young Pyromancer on turn 2, and then to start drawing spells, hopefully before we draw too many more mountains. So my opponent is doing what I expected. He's playing the small creatures to attack quickly. I'm going to have to survive his initial onslaught, and then use my strong late game spells to defeat him. Young Pyromancer is going out, turning any future spell I play into an extra creature. And I've drawn a very nice burn spell here in Chandra's Fury, which I'll be able to use later to clean up my opponent's board of little creatures. For example, this Thopter Engineer is about to make itself a tiny little token creature. My Chandra's Fury will quickly allow me to deal with that. I believe that token has haste, so we can probably just attack right away. Yeah. So I could block. I could use my Young Pyromancer to block his Brute. That would be a very bad plan, though. Although our creatures would trade, and he would actually lose 2 life because of the Brute's ability, my Young Pyromancer is a much, much better creature than his Brute. I don't want it to die before I get any value from it, and I'll be able to kill his Brute with my spells later anyway. So I'm going to skip blocking, let my opponent deal me 3 damage. I really don't care much at all. And draw another mountain. So I am getting a little bit flooded here. I've drawn too many lands for what my deck is trying to do. I could use my Ravaging Blaze here to kill his Thopter. That would be a very poor use of this card. This card can kill basically anything, and to waste it on a creature that's going to die when I cast Chandra's Fury anyway would be a bad plan. But it's nice to know that I have that option. So I skip through my attack step, not attacking with my Young Pyromancer because he would block and kill it with his Artificer. And we go to his turn. Hopefully he doesn't have anything too scary for us. Very shortly here, I'll be able to deploy my 5 mana spells, and at that point, the advantage is going to swing back to me very quickly. Okay, so this Reclusive Artificer is a bit of a problem for sure. It's going to come into play and be able to deal 1 damage to my Young Pyromancer, killing my poor Pyromancer off, which sucks. I can prevent that though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Ravaging Blaze, spending all of my mana in order to kill his Thopter. That wasn't a great use of the card before, but it is now, because now with the Thopter dead, his Reclusive Artificer deals 0 damage, because there's 0 artifacts left on the board, to my Young Pyromancer, and my best card lives to fight another day. Now, I could chump block here. I could use the Elemental that I just produced, based on the ability of my Young Pyromancer, to stop either of these creatures from dealing damage to me, but I really don't mind taking this 4 damage. I'm going to skip blocking. Take the 4, go to 13, and we'll move things on to my turn. Now, Fiery Impulse is a very nice spell here. It's just deals 2 damage to a creature. That's going to let me kill either of my opponent's guys on his turn, or deal with anything that he might play from hand. So I'm just going to skip through my attacks. And let him make the first mistake. I'm almost stabilized here. As soon as I get the 5th mana down, things are going to be going really well for me. Okay, so my opponent decided to attack with everything. That's probably going to be a decision that he regrets. I'm going to use the Fiery Impulse, and with it I'm going to deal 2 damage to the Reclusive Artificer. Also, I'm going to make a Elemental with my Young Pyromancer, and I'm going to use my Elemental to block the Artificer to kill it. We'll deal a total of 3 damage with it. So, this starts with the Fiery Impulse to target the Artificer. First thing that's going to happen is a new token is going to come into play. Then, I'm going to be able to declare my blocks. Now, one of these blocks is fairly straightforward. I'm going to use my Elemental to block his Artificer now that that'll kill it. Then it's the same decision I had last turn. I could use this other Elemental to block either one of these guys to stop myself from taking damage. But next turn, once I cast Chandra's Fury, my blocks are going to be so much better that I would way rather wait and use this blocker then. So, I'm just going to block that 1 creature so that it trades off with my Elemental. Take the 3 damage. No big deal. My opponent has another Brute. Don't care at all. And now we're good to go. I get to play my 5th land, and now I'm in great position to start cleaning up my opponent's board. I would absolutely love to be able to play this 2nd Young Pyromancer and get a token off of it when I play Chandra's Fury, but I really think I do need to play Chandra's Fury this turn when my opponent attacks with everything, so that's going to be my plan instead. Hopefully, my opponent attacks with everything. If he does, then I'm going to be able to kill all his creatures, and that would be very nice. I'm not going to attack with any. So here comes my opponent's attack. It is an attack with all his dudes. This is perfect for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Chandra's Fury, targeting him, to deal 1 point of damage to all his creatures initially. It's also going to produce an extra Elemental for me. Then I'm going to block. I can now block both his Brutes with my Elementals. That's going to be able to kill off the Brutes, and I can even block his Thopter Engineer with my Young Pyromancer. I've gotten enough value out of the Young Pyromancer at this point, and I don't have any instant spells left in hand, that I'm totally happy setting up the Pyromancer as my blocker here. Confirm that block. And I've managed to fully clean out my opponent's board. And now the fact that I have more cards in hand, and that my cards are more suited to the late game, is really going to start paying off for me. Okay, what am I going to do now? I can either cast the Fire Elemental and have a giant creature on board, or I can cast Young Pyromancer and have Flames of the Firebrand up. I'm going to do those 2 things over my next 2 turns anyway. My opponent is kind of played out right now. I don't expect Flames of the Firebrand to be great against him. And the Fire Elemental makes better overall use of my mana, so that's what I'm going to cast. Really, at this point, we're just kind of mopping up. My opponent almost certainly can't deal with the size of the threats that I can field now that I've reached the top of my mana curve. And I'm just drawing more and more and more of these young Pyromancers, which are great. Same reason as last turn, I have no interest in playing Flames of the Firebrand yet, but I can deploy both of my Pyromancers. So I'm going to get my attack in with the Elemental here. I'm going to play out both of my young Pyromancers, and that should set me up to win next turn through almost any sort of defense that my opponent could put together. If he kills both of my Pyromancers, then my spell and my Elemental together will kill him. If he kills one of my Pyromancers and puts a blocker out, then my Flames of the Firebrand can kill his blocker. That's what's going to happen here. Okay, so rather than talk about this in the abstract, I'll just make it happen. So he's created 2 creatures, which would normally be pretty good for him because it would allow him to block both of my young Pyromancers. But as it stands, I can use Flames the Firebrand to kill both of his blockers and then swing in with all of my creatures. So, casting this spell, I'm going to deal, let me make sure I know how this works. Yeah, 1 damage to the Thopter, 1 damage to the Aeronaut, another damage to the Aeronaut, confirm. It's going to make 2 tokens for me before anything else. Then it's going to kill his guys. Or it didn't kill his guys. I must have not clicked that correctly. That's okay. But I still get to attack in. And even if he blocks, I'm going to deal him 7 damage and win the game here. Or, sorry, no, because he was able to block my big guy because it wasn't dead. Alright, well, me misclicking on that Flames made this a less exciting end than it could have been, but the game's over either way. Even if he managed to kill every single one of my creatures there, a quick casting of Chandra's Fury ends the game. Okay, so there you go. So I did kind of guess wrong when I guessed what the Chandra deck would be. I thought it would be a more low to the ground deck that played a lot of small creatures in an aggressive style. That's a pretty common way for red to go. But it seems more like it's a spells matter deck where I set myself up to profit from casting large instants and sorceries, and then I do so at the end of the game to overpower my opponent. I like this kind of deck. I prefer it to the solely aggressive strategy that I thought was coming. I like Young Pyromancer. I like flooding the board with elemental tokens. I'm looking forward to playing this campaign. Let's move on to the next part.